All right, so in this upcoming one, we're going to be discussing some jQuery functions to make our progress bars work correctly. And I just wanted to tell you that if you don't want to go through this whole 40-minute video to actually use jQuery in your project, all you'll have to do is go onto the GitHub here and look for the use jQuery for Bootstrap progress bars lecture. It's not on GitHub yet, but it will be. And that will show you at least this code here. So in the share.html, all you'd really be doing is adding in the block of jQuery with all this code, and then you could just copy basically this whole share.html page and paste it into your project based off of that lecture if you want to skip this jQuery part, because it actually is pretty long and we go through everything that you would need to do. But again, if we're not going to go in too much detail of jQuery, so this is really for those of you who don't know anything about it. And then also, if you wanted to just see how jQuery works, it'd be good to watch the video. But realistically, we're not going to be using a whole lot of jQuery going forward. It's really just to build this functionality or this animation here to where when that number changes. So if I change the number to like to 22, all these would change along with it. So if you want to know how to do that, continue on. Otherwise, you can just get this code right here from the GitHub at Coding for Entrepreneurs' GitHub and launch with code. And then again, look for update jQuery for Bootstrap Progress Bar will be the name of it. And it should be on one of these lecture codes here once it's actually released. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. All right, so in this one, we're going to be doing a basic JavaScript or actually jQuery function that's going to allow these percentages and the filling up of them to be a little bit more dynamic, because right now this is just not that great. So if we look at the code and we go into our share.html page, we can change the percentage of each reward depending on what we want, right? So the percentage is the progress bar here. So if we wanted it, let's say we can change the value now to, let's say, 50, and then we would want to change the style to 50%. So the value now and the style, and then we do a refresh, and we see that now it says 50%. It's 50% there. So we would also want to change the text itself to 50%. So how do we actually calculate that number? So our join number is 7. We're going to ignore that for a second, but we are going to actually use some arbitrary number, and we have to set up our jQuery to actually work. So in our base.html, we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom. Notice we have jQuery already linked up, so we can use jQuery. I'm actually going to put a new block down here, a new script block. First, I'm going to do script for HTML tags. And then I'm going to do $document ready, and then function on the inside with some curly brackets, just like this. So this is basically saying when the DOM is ready, or the document, when the page is loaded, basically fully loaded, then you're going to run some functions. And this is a jQuery syntax. So this right here, as of JavaScript, will not work unless jQuery is in there. So I'm not actually going to go into too much jQuery here, but if you want to learn more, this is kind of a nice little introduction for you. You don't actually have to know very much jQuery to make this thing work, because I'm going to show you how to do it. All right, so what we'll do here is we're going to add a Django template tag, so block tags, so block, and then I'll just say block jQuery, and then in block. So what these blocks, of course, allow me to do is put some code in here that's going to run as jQuery. So if we look at it now, our page right here, and we go to inspect element, and we go into into elements, and then to the bottom of the body tag, we see an empty block here. So that is allowing us to actually write some jQuery code. So let's actually just make sure that it's working. So we're going to copy these blocks, bring them into share.html, and then I'm actually going to put it above my content block, even though the way it's rendered will still be below it, but I just want it above. And all I'm going to do is alert hello. Right, so this is all I'm doing just to test that it's working. So if I do a refresh in here, it alerts hello. And it would do it after the page is loaded, right? So after the page is ready, it goes for it and then does hello. All right, so that is the basic starting of it. But now we actually need to change a few things, which would be changing the size of this stuff based on some count. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set a variable for our count. So sign up. So I'm just going to say sign up count equals to, right now I'm just going to do an arbitrary number of 5. Eventually we will use this count tag right here. So all I did was set a jQuery variable to 5. And to make a jQuery variable, you just use the $ in front of the variable name. You can use var as well to set a variable name, but jQuery convention is using the $. There are a few other ways, but this will just be nice and useful for us. So I'm going to set the count. I set it to 5. I actually want to set it into 3 because we're going to be worrying about that first progress bar at this point. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the class of progress bar. So I'll go class progress bar, and then I'm just going to go CSS and width, and then I will say 80%. All right, so all I did was grab the progress bar class, and this is going to be all of the classes of progress bar, and it's going to change the width to 80%. So if we scroll down here, we have this style, so that's what CSS would be referred to, is the style, and then we added a CSS attribute of width, and we set that width to 80%. So what that should do is set all of our progress bar classes to a width of 80%. So let's try it out and do a refresh. And we see that's what it did. It set all of them to 80%. Cool. So that was actually fairly straightforward. And we can also change the area value now, or aria value now. So we can go dot attribute. So now we grab attribute of the actual tag, and we can grab area value now, and we will say 80. And then last but not least, we can do text being 80%. All right, so if I do a refresh, I now see that all these change. Notice that there's a little bit of an animation. That's because after they actually are loaded, the page is loaded, then it's telling it to go and change the width. And the way the Bootstrap works is it allows it to actually have that little bit of animation. So if I do a refresh, I see that it animates a little bit, and they're going different directions, which really they should be going from 0 to 80. So let's put our starting spot at 0 for all of them. So 0, 0, 0, because it shouldn't start at 100, right? Because they're not actually full. If anything, they are at 0. They're not going to be 100% right off the bat. All right, so I got all 4 of them. Now it loads just like that. All right, that's cool. So what we see here now is we have the ability to actually change the percentage of this based off of whatever some number is, right? So we have this number, sign up count, and we're now able to change all of the progress bar ones to that count. Now, this is not the best way to do it, of course, because for 5 joined, we have 7 here, right? So the join number is 7. So this should technically be 100%, and this should be some percentage of that. So it should be 7 out of 15, really, right? So that's the percentage that it would actually be. And then we would have to adjust this percentage accordingly. All right, so how do we do that? All right, so the first thing is we'll have to create some sort of if-then statement. So I'm going to do if, and then I'll say sign up count is greater than 0, and, so 2 ampersands to say and, basically. So if it's greater than 0 and sign up count is less than or equal to 5, then we are going to do something here, right? So basically, if it's less than or equal to 5, then we will set the 5 one, or the first one right here, we want to set this to 100% basically, or whatever is left on it. So let's actually go ahead and do that. I'm going to add an ID to it. So this progress bar right here, I'm just going to add ID equals to count 5. I'm just giving it an ID so I can reference it specifically. So what I'll do is I'll say, I'm going to go $, hashtag count 5. So hashtag is for the ID, dot is for the class. And then I'm going to use all this stuff right here. So I'll copy that. And now I'm going to comment this out. All right, so if I refresh, we now see that, hey, check it out. It's loading up to 80% because it is greater than 0 and it's less than or equal to 5, right? So it's 3 right here, so it's less than or equal to 5. Now this isn't actually that smart because what it's doing here is it's setting it to an arbitrary 80%, so we actually need to calculate what the percentage would be. So we could say new percent equals to, so it's going to be the sign up count number, so whatever this number will be, so this, divided by whatever we are working with. So in this case, we're working with count 5, so that would mean that there's going to be 5 there. So that's going to give us 3/5 here. So 3/5 times 100 should be our new percent. So that's going to give us a number that's in here in the range of 100. So I'm going to do new percent plus percentage would be the width, right? So this is adding these together. And then if I grab this new percent as well, I change it here. And then new percent plus percent, just like that for the text. And we save the text and I do a refresh. And there we go. So we see 60% and it's about 60% full. So if I change this to 4, it goes to 80%. Change it to 5, goes to 100%. That's exactly what we want to see, right? So in the case that sign up count is less than or equal to 5 and greater than 0, then we have this coming through. Now, this is not always going to work super well for us because once it's 7, what happens? So let's change it to 7. It stays to practically nothing, basically. I mean, it did change the new percentage to 50%. That's not actually that great, right? We want it to fill up each one based on whatever the number is that the count is, right? So this realistically should have been 100% here, and then it should be something in the lines of 7 divided by 15, right? So we've talked about that. Now, when it's 15, it should be 100, 100. So we have to change our code up a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is if it's less than 5, so I'm going to say if it's greater than 0 and less than 5, then we will set that first one according to this, right? But now, else if sign up count is greater or equal to 5 and sign up count is less than and sign up count is less than, so if it's less than a certain number, so the next number would be the next reward up, right? So in this case, it'd be 15. So if it's less than 15, then we're going to do something. Last but not least, I'm just going to leave else as an empty clause. All right, so now if sign up count is greater than or equal to 5, we want our count 5 to be 100%. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it here, and change this not to new percentage, but instead being 100%. And then value now would be 100. And last but not least, we would put text of completed. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. And I'm going to just put this at 14 because of this clause right here. So I'm saying 14, sign up count is 14. If I refresh now, I see that 5 is now completed. Great. So, and if I go to 4, it says 80%, 10, completed, right? So perfect. So now it is actually fulfilling this count, and that's good. That's what we want to see. So the next part would be setting the new percentage, right? Very similar to what we did before, but now it's 15. Okay, so it's 15, which would be the sign-up count. So if sign-up count, whatever that number is, divided by 15 times 100, we would want to actually see what the percentage of this is actually being completed. So I'm going to actually go ahead and copy this, copy the one above it of count 5, paste this in. Now, of course, we need to change this to count 15, and we need to add this as an ID to our next one, our next reward of 15 joined. So in here, we do ID equals to count 15. So if I refresh in here, so now it's actually rounding. It's rounding the number, or it's not rounding the number. It should round the number probably, but it's not. And it's 66% of the way to 15, right? So perhaps this isn't actually the best way to calculate what the width would be here, right? Because it's really not 66% of the way to 15 as it relates to this join. Realistically, it has 10 more to go, right? So it has 10 more to go, and it's only 2 of 10, right? So let's think about this. 5 already joined, so let's look at this as more like 10. And then we have 7, so 5 of that is already accounted for. So there's only 2 of the 15, 2 of the 10, that are really there. All right, so I'm going to scroll back up and hopefully explain this a little bit more clear. All right, so we've got our count. So let's just go back to being 7. And so that means that our 5 count, this first 5 one, should subtract from 7, right? So new count is equal to 7 minus 5. So whatever the sign-up count is minus 5, right? And this 5 has to do with that first block. Okay, so that is giving us a number that is going to be a little bit less than what we're actually working with, right? So if I'm removing this number, so now I have 2, so this would give me 2. That is actually the percentage, or the first part of the percentage that we're working with, and the actual bottom part, the sign-up count itself, would have to be then divisible by 10, because that one should also be removed. 5 should be removed from that as well. So again, this should be looked at as 10 additional to this 5, right? So then how far along are we on there? And realistically, 7 out of 15 is closer to 20%. It's 120% of 200%, right? Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, we're just going to keep going through so you can kind of follow along. All right, so what I have to do is use this new count here. And then I'm going to change this to new count. All right, so now if I refresh in here, it's 20% done of 15 total joined, right? So if it was 15 total and it was 7, then it would look a little bit different than this, right? It would be 66% because it was just 15. But we already accounted for 5 of those percentage points, or actually more than 5 of those percentage points. We counted for, this accounts for a third of it, and then this is the other like 20% that would have to be added on top of that. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, we will do another one right now. So now we do else if sign up, and I'm going to do sign up count is greater than or equal to 15, and sign up count is less than 25. So the next number in a reward, right? So that's our next number. Okay, then now what we do is we're going to do the same thing as this count 5 being done. And then we would save the count 15 exactly the same way. Right, so now we have count 15 and count 5 because now it's greater than 15. So let's go ahead and put 15 there. And if I refresh, it should, it's breaking there. So let's see what's going on here. So sign up count, else if sign up count is greater than 15. That's right. Okay, let's see what's going on. I'm going to go to inspect element and see if there's something wrong in our console. On its unexpected token else, that's because I ran the block right there. All right, and that's something nice about the consoles. It'll tell us if there's something wrong. Of course, you will be able to actually check this code online. So now we see 5 and 15. So now it's actually full, right, on either one of them. So if it was 14, and do a refresh in here, it's 90% of the way to what this would be done, right? So one more sign up is done. So it's actually 190% of roughly 200. I mean, it's not quite perfect, but it's definitely getting there. All right, so now after we do that, we have to do this count again. So let's bring this back down. New count. So now it's going to be minus 15. Right? So because we have 15 accounted for already, and the new percentage is going to be the new count divided by, and it will be 25 minus 15. So the difference between what we are actually subtracting, and then we times that by 100. So this one was the difference of 15 minus 5. All right, so it is 10 more, but this is going to actually show us a more accurate percentage. So if we save it and we change this to 17 and do a refresh in here, we actually didn't change the 25 at all, so let's actually go ahead and do this count 25 thing all over again. And actually, it's best practice to have semicolons at the end of these to signify that line is done. All right, so now we change this to count 25, and again, we have to add that ID. So scroll down to the 25 join reward and add the ID of count 25. And if we refresh in here, it's now saying completed. So let's actually take a look. Oh, that's because of this. So what we really needed was this one right here, and change that to 25. And we refresh, we've got a 0. That's because I put an ampersand there when it should be a times. Refresh, and now that says 20% as well. And if I did 24, 90%. Right, so it's making it a little bit closer and a little bit more readable for anyone. They're 90% of the way there on 25 joined, right? Because realistically, even if they have 16, that they are 100% done here, 100% done here, and now 10% done with 25. So that would just mean that they need 10 more to actually, or excuse me, 9 more to actually get there, because it's at 16. Right, and that makes it a little bit more clear and easier for them to understand. Okay, so now another else if, and this time it's going to be sign up count being greater than 25, greater than or equal to 25, greater than or equal to 25, and sign up count is less than 50, so less than 50. And then we're going to add our curly brackets and do that. All right, so again, we're going to copy these. And then we are also going to copy it just one more line to cover the 25. Okay. And now we would do the percentage all over again. And now instead of minus 15, it's going to be minus 25. And then 50 minus 25. There we go. And then this should be count 50. Great. So let's actually change this to 46. And then I also need to add count 50 to our reward as the ID. Scroll down. ID equals count 50. Refresh. And there we go. We've got 84%. And then if we do a different number, let's say like 26, it's going to be very small number as it should be, right? It should be 4%. Okay, so now what do we have? Well, we have this code, and overall it looks decent, except we repeat ourselves a lot, and that's not really something that you should do. You should actually be not repeating yourself hardly at all, actually. So let's just define a function, and we're going to call it complete block, and it's going to take in the block ID, or actually the progress bar ID. And that progress bar ID, we are going to be completing it. So all we really are doing here is just changing the progress bar ID just like this. Right? So that's all we're doing in this complete block for any progress bar ID. So I'm going to copy that progress bar ID and paste that there. Cool. So now that's complete block. So I can use complete block in place of all this other stuff. So complete block, and then I use count 5. So that's actually going to give me the complete block. It actually makes that block completed. So if I refresh again, it still works. So now we can change all of our complete blocks, which would be these, to our new function. And then down here, 25, remove these. And then the last one, which we still haven't done, which we will in a second. So just checking that they're there. Last one is if it's greater than or equal to 50. So we could just leave that in the else block because we cover if it's greater than 0. We actually don't cover if it is 0. So maybe we would want to add that in as well. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to change this to else if, and then I'll just say if sign up count equals to 0. Just going to do that, and then else, so anything greater than 50, we're just going to have all of them completed. So let's try that out. We will say 77. They're all completed. Then we'll say 0 and nothing. So these numbers inside, the text should all be 0%. So I'm going to scroll down to the progress bars and change all of these just to 0% to start out, because that is where they really are. And there we go. So if we change it, 0%. Okay, so now what we could do is we could change this percentage to the number joined, or we could write more text in there, and that's kind of up to you. And that would be up to you here, right? So in the text itself, in completed, you could say completed, or also in the text when you set the new percentage, right here, you can also set the text there as well. So let's actually create a function to set the new percentage, and I'll say function set new percent, so PERC, and then we'll say we're going to do progress bar ID again, and then another argument, which would be the percent, so percent number, so it's not the actual percentage but the percent number. So we can copy this one, and you could even say like text, and then like new text as well, and then change, so progress bar ID, we could change this to being here, and then we can say percent num to being new percent, this right here, and then this right here, and last but not least, that right there. All right, so this is a function that will allow us, so we use our curly brackets at the end, this function will allow us to set our text a little bit nicer. So new percent, so the first argument is progress bar ID, so we set the progress bar ID, and then we set the new percent, so percent num, which would be new percent, and then the text, and we could say number of friends and then just add in the new percent number as our last one, as our text. So I'm going to comment this out, with slash slash at the front. Okay. Run a refresh. Oh, we might actually want to have some in here, and we will say 4. Looks like I might have an error again. So inspect element, console, unexpected token with the parentheses. So let's see where that's coming from. So the parentheses, I don't see it right off the bat, so I'm going to click on this. So it's the progress bar one. So it's this right here. So I have this comma here, and I don't want that comma. Hopefully that solves the problem. There it goes. So now we have our text as number of friends, and then it says 80, which is not correct, obviously. So we would want to use the actual sign-up count, not what I put, which was the new percent. We would use sign-up count here. And I'm going to remove this now. Refresh, and now we have number of friends, and it's changing our actual items correctly, right, on how we see it fit. Okay, so we can go through and do this exact same thing with all of our other ones. So count 15, and I'm just going to leave it as that. Do a refresh. Let's do 14. And there we go. So now it's going to change according to that. So let's just finish it all off, and I'm going to copy this, paste it there, 25, and then last but not least, we will do 50. And let's test it out to 44. Number of friends, okay, perfect, and then 24. Number of friends, 24. So there we go. So that's it. That is how we adjust these exactly. And the only thing we actually have to do now is change our sign-up count to being this count number here. So in our template tag, we would just bring that up, save that there, and refresh. And now it's going to say it. See, well, what we notice is that, hey, maybe on a low number, it's actually not going to look great as far as the text goes. So maybe you wouldn't want to go that text route like what we had just a second ago with this function. But now instead of changing all of them, all we would have to do is change what our new text would be. And you can change it to being anything you want. So nearly there, or almost, right? So there's a lot of things that you could do here, and you could even change the percent num, so you could do it in here where it's like, so if percent num is less than 100, or not 100, but like less than 50, then we say, then you can set this text. You can just do progress bar ID and then dot text, and so close to half, right? So you could do that, and then that would change that. Hold on, let's remove the, oops. I'm gonna remove this first text. So percent num, oops, I didn't spell percent correctly here. That's why that was not working. So let's change it to percent. Okay, and then we refresh. Got some errors here. This L at the end here, you use a semicolon. There it goes. So close, right? So that's kind of how you would do it. There's a lot of things that you can do within functions, and technically this itself should be probably wrapped in a function too. And then it just takes in an argument as sign-up count. But this allows us to just kind of be a little bit smarter about how our stuff is working and how we can actually make this show a little bit better. All right, so I know this is a lot, and jQuery itself, there's a lot to learn for it. But it's very, I mean, when it really comes down to it, it's still very similar to Python in the sense that you've got the if-then statements, you have functions that can take arguments, you can do stuff with those arguments, and yeah, I mean, I realize I didn't explain all of this stuff all that well, but the more you learn about jQuery, the better you will understand it, and also the more you play with it. So in this case, progress bar ID and then .text, all that means is it's taking the text within whatever the HTML tag that is. So, right, so if the tag here was row and we change the text for the row, it's going to add text here, right? So it would replace all the text that's inside of it and change it to that. Another thing that you can do as well is put HTML and then write some HTML code here, and then that would change whatever the HTML code is within that tag as well. So a lot of those things will come as you experiment more with it. But yeah, so what we see here is a cool and easy way to actually add some functions and some functionality to our front end to make it look a little bit better. And I'm actually going to put the text back to new text, and I'll just put text here and say new text, and then I'll say else, also being new text as well, and then your custom text. All right, and notice how we added strings. Before I added it with just a plus, and that will add a string of some kind in there as well. And luckily it will also add numbers as strings too, especially if you set it up as a variable correctly. Okay, so I know that's a lot. Let me know if you have any questions on this. Otherwise, we're going to keep going. This is just an easier way to display these numbers. Now, I do want to say that there is one caveat to using JavaScript or jQuery in this case. Because if we scroll down, what we see here is we have some values, right? So we have 100 and then the width. So whatever our numbers are, we could actually change it to having some type of function from our view itself saying what percentage it is. So we could do a whole-on thing where we'd say like percent dictionaries, and we could set like 5 joined true, and then like we could do all this stuff in here where we could use our dictionary here and use those values inside of all this stuff. Now I'm not going to do that. I wanted to show you guys the jQuery way so you can get a little bit familiar with jQuery and see that it's actually pretty approachable. Even if you didn't know everything that we were doing or fully understand it, it is pretty approachable on how it works. All right, so we still have to add the links here, the social sharing links, and then we want to actually update the colors a little bit, and then maybe add some more text so it looks even closer to this. And yeah, all right, so we will see you in the next one.